Hello everyone, and welcome to another BuyAndStoreGold.com interview with a precious metals industry professional. I'm Roger Bond, and today we have as our guest Mr. Ed D'Agostino. He is the General Manager of the Hard Assets Alliance, a relatively new company for buying physical gold, silver, platinum, and palladium that can be delivered to you or stored in one of their secure vault locations around the globe. We personally opened several accounts at Hard Assets Alliance right away when they opened, and have been very pleased with everything about the service ever since. Thank you for agreeing to be with us today, Ed. Could we perhaps start by having you give us a brief description of Hard Assets Alliance and maybe what sets it apart from some of your competitors?
Oh, sure, I'd be happy to. And thanks for having me. So basically, Hard Assets Alliance, our goal was to bring investors the convenience and the liquidity of an ETF, but at the same time, give them the security and the peace of mind that comes with owning physical precious metal. So what I mean by that is when we were starting Hard Assets Alliance, we surveyed everything that was out there for products and services and just picked out the best things that we liked. And what we liked best about an ETF was the ease of trading and the liquidity. What we didn't like is the lack of a physical aspect to holding your gold or silver. Conversely, dealers offer gold and silver that can be shipped to your door, which in some instances is great, and we actually offer that service. But you're limited in how much you can have on hand or how much is prudent to have on hand. And then you need to start thinking about offsite storage. And that's where we felt like there was really a void in the market. So we tried to combine the best aspects of all the different services out there into one. And that's how we arrived at the Alliance. So in a nutshell, we have an online trading platform that will feel very comfortable to anyone who has an online brokerage account. So you can open an account, fund your account just like you would, say, an E-Trade. And then you can, instead of buying stocks, you can buy physical precious metal. And you can buy that metal for delivery, or you can buy it for storage at one of our US or international storage vaults. And you can sell that metal back to our network of wholesale dealers and LBMA listed refiners whenever you want. So there's your liquidity piece. Or you can take delivery, say you want to have your metals in storage, and 6 months later you decide you want some of it delivered. You just get online, choose X number of bars or coins, and click deliver, and they're on their way to you.
Well, I think you've really hit a sweet spot with the investors out there based on the popularity of what we have seen so far. There really was, I think, a void, and it seems like you've done a great job of filling it and just kind of increasing your offerings ever since you started the service. One of the things I guess I'd like to discuss an advantage of HAA being U.S. based, and you touched on it just a little bit, but I mean, now for me, this means that you're a little bit easier to trust. And maybe this is kind of an American thing, where we kind of trust our own country a little bit more. I understand that, Europeans and things don't necessarily have that maybe barrier, but you also have convenient hours. It's not like trying to get a hold of London at a, 7 hour time shift or worse if you're on the West Coast. And you've got real English speaking representatives who I've talked to several times by phone, and they are very pleasant to deal with.
Absolutely. I mean, the big reason for being US based is exactly that. We can offer investors a US account. For non-US individuals, that's actually become quite intriguing. So we're starting to see a big influx of non-US account holders because they want to have an account that's not in their own backyard. For US account holders, there's several realities that they have to deal with, particularly when they look at getting assets outside of the US. On face value, getting your assets outside of the US is a good idea, and I agree with that, and that's why we offer international storage. But the way that you do it is there's some nuance there, and really it comes down to personal preference. You have a couple of choices. You can set up a US account to hold your assets overseas, and that's what the Hard Assets Alliance offers. So you have a US controlled account that maybe has gold for storage in Zurich or Singapore, two of our more popular overseas locations. So what does that mean? It means you don't have to deal with reporting a foreign account or foreign holdings because technically those are US holdings. And yet your metal's still outside of the US. You can take delivery of it whenever you want, wherever you want. So I look at that as a nice blend. Others may say, no, I want my metal to be completely outside of the US, and that's fine. But you have to declare that, you have to report that. And the reality is, if you're thinking that you can sort of be below the radar and move assets out of the country, I think anyone who's been watching over the last couple of years knows that that is becoming more and more a fairy tale.
Not only a fairy tale, but even kind of dangerous if they end up getting your name from that Swiss banker or from that German programmer who stole a CD or whatever it might be.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we do not at all advocate, nor do we want to try and help anyone evade U.S. reporting requirements. We wouldn't encourage that. And we don't have any part in it. But at the same time, we acknowledge that, every individual has individual needs. They may have a house overseas or travel abroad frequently and want to have easy access to some of their assets while they're abroad. That's a perfectly legitimate reason to have metals stored overseas. So we try to make it as easy as we can.
Well, and in our case, we've even got some relatives here that it was a little bit of a step for them to even, I guess, embrace the idea of gold ownership in the first place, especially
Mm-hmm.
when they're being bombarded with the popular story that it's a relic and so forth. But to get them to actually open an overseas account was just a step they weren't willing to take. And when Hard Assets Alliance came around, I thought, hey, this is perfect. It's exactly what they're looking for.
Sure. And those are exactly the type of people that I hope to reach more of. And shows like yours do a great job of helping us with that. I think it's really important that sort of your mainstream investors start to become more comfortable with precious metals as an asset class. Everyone's got a certain level of comfort and a certain philosophical bend, I guess you'd say, as to how they want to invest. And we do have customers who are self-described as all in. That is all that they invest in is precious metal, and we love those customers. Obviously, there are some of our biggest and best customers, but then I speak to others like you referenced who just don't get it, don't understand precious metal at all, and it can be a hard concept to grasp. But when you look at history, it's irrefutable that silver and gold for thousands and thousands of years are the only lasting form of currency that the world has ever seen. And to, I think it would be hard for anyone that gets a little bit educated to come to any other conclusion than, gee, I really should have some allocation to precious metals in my portfolio, just like other asset classes.
Well, it's kind of surprising that people don't start to see the light when it's always big news when some English farmer plows his field and turns up a few coins, or sea-based recovery firms go after these sunken treasure ships or sunken treasure in these ships. It's always just a big news item, but people still aren't putting two and two together, a lot of them.
Sure. Well, and it's not the party line. It's not what central banks are going to get on mainstream media and tell the general populace that they should buy gold because it's not in their best interest. Though, ironically, central banks over the last several years have been the biggest buyers of gold in the world. So watch what they do, not what they say.
Absolutely. One of the perhaps small disadvantages of being US based is that you do issue 1099s. Now, just a question here. Do you issue 1099s for all sales or just those where it's actually required, either because of a dollar value or a certain number of ounces of a type of metal? And I don't think people ask this because they necessarily want to cheat on their taxes. I think most think of it more from a privacy end of it. But could you comment on that just briefly?
Sure. So what we do is once a year, and it's the end of January, we issue 1099s for the prior year. And we only issue those 1099s for metal that you have sold. So if you as an individual or an entity, any customer who buys precious metal through the Hard Assets Alliance and puts it into storage and subsequently sells some or all of it, we will issue you a 1099 on the portion that you've sold.
And
So
never on just a delivery. A delivery is totally irrelevant. Is that
that's
correct?
that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. And then obviously with an IRA, there's a different set of reporting that happens. Essentially, once a year, we issue through Entrust, our IRA partner, we issue a distribution statement at the end of each year. So just like any other IRA, if you take money out or if you take metal out, that is considered a distribution and that's reportable.
Sure, sure. Now, what type of trends are you seeing in the type of metals that customers are buying? Are you seeing any shifts between, silver versus gold, or maybe customers starting to go after those, PGMs, platinum and palladium?
Seeing two shifts right now. One, I'm seeing more silver, a bigger allocation to silver versus gold. And I'm seeing a move more towards bars than coins. So we still sell more coins in the 1 ounce denomination than equivalent bars, but bars are climbing up, particularly on the gold side. And I think that that is wise. So long as you leave your gold bar in the wrapper, it is not going to be challenged if you take delivery and then later on go to sell it. So I always encourage people that take delivery, leave it in the packaging. I know it's tempting to take it out and look at
Sure.
it, but and it is, gold and silver. They're beautiful metals. I have a bunch of silver coins on my desk that I just took delivery of yesterday, and they're spectacular looking. So it's hard not to do that. But leave it in the packaging. Bars, you're going to pay a lower premium because you're not going to pay someone as much to mint that bar as you do a coin. So you're paying closer to pure metal costs when you buy a bar as opposed to a coin.
Well, and of course, what you're referring to is avoiding any assay on sale. We personally have seen more of the 10-ounce bars start to get used, the people we work with, for that very reason. If you're going to deploy, that kind of cash, and as gold came down, that was easier to do. As you say, you're getting more gold for your money.
That's absolutely right, and we've seen an uptick in kilogram bars as well. That's just obviously a special, special class of individual from a net worth perspective that is going to invest in kg bars, and you're looking at $50,000 per bar. So it's not everyone that can do that, but for those that can, I have seen a shift. The people that used to buy 10 1 ounce bars are now buying one 10 ounce bar. The people used to accumulate 10 ounce bars are now buying kg bars. So everyone seems to be stepping up, which
Hmm.
makes sense because you pay less per ounce by doing that.
And the only disadvantage would be is if you wanted to sell, say, half your holdings. But there again, if you, as long as you can afford 2 bars, you can always do that anyway. So, but yeah, like
That's
you
right.
say, the larger the better.
That's right.
Now, I feel like I personally know the answer to this next question, but I think a lot of folks out there would like to hear it. And that is, are all the vaults that you offer equally safe and secure?
They are. And I'm glad you asked me that because when we first launched, our vaulting partners asked us not to use their names. And that was really an obstacle for me is how can I get people to trust our vaulting when we're just launching our company when we can't use your names? But they were concerned about marketing and using their names for marketing purposes. So we've gone through long discussions and many of them to get them to understand that we're not trying to trade on their name, but at the same time, our customers deserve to know who's storing their metals. So I'm pleased to now be able to officially say that we use the three largest non-bank vaulters in the world, and that's Brinks, Malka Amit, and Viamat. So those are names that most of your listeners are going to be familiar with. Brinks runs the vaults in New York City, Salt Lake City, and Melbourne, Australia. And then Malka Amit is in Singapore, and Viamat is our other locations. So Zurich and London.
Yeah, and I think the Malcolm Mitt would be the only one that probably almost everyone hasn't at least heard of. Certainly people in the industry have full confidence in them as well.
That's correct. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Now, what are you seeing as your customer's favorite vault location? And do you see any trends here? And obviously you've been adding some new vault options for a reason. So what can you tell us about that?
Very clear trends there. In the US, Salt Lake City is almost 2-1 the favored vault,
Really?
which I found sort of surprising at first. I think it has to do with a few things. I mean, I've asked lots of our customers when I'm on the phone with them, why Salt Lake City as opposed to New York? Some it's just sort of an ingrained bias against anything that even sounds like Wall Street, and I get that. So that's for that. But others want to be west of the Mississippi. Some of it is because they're west of the Mississippi. Utah is a very pro precious metal state. It's very friendly. In fact, Utah is one of the two states that has been trying to get precious metals accepted in the state as legal tender.
Yes.
And I think the Hurricane Sandy that came through last year, really put a scare into people because I did see some holdings shift out of New York and over to Salt Lake. So that's the U.S. Overseas, we added Singapore about 4 or 5 months ago now. It is by far the number one overseas destination for new purchases. I would say 75% of metals purchased for overseas storage are going to Singapore at this point.
Wow.
Really remarkable. Before Singapore came online, it was Zurich. Since Singapore has come online, Zurich is still number two, but Singapore is just dominating.
Well, not that I think it necessarily matters, but there's been a lot of negative press about Switzerland with some of the things they've been doing as far as their private banking and or banking in general, and that may have some effect on it. But there's also been a lot of, if you read the right kind of press, a lot of emphasis on going over to the east and getting into Singapore and those type of areas because that's where the shift is going. So people are probably very glad to see when you open that up.
Absolutely. And you're right. The Singapore market is very, very strong, as is the entire Asian market. So it does make sense to have a chunk of your holdings in a market where there's high demand levels.
And where they understand the metal besides.
Exactly.
Now, a question we get all the time, and originally the answer was not yet, and that is, can I send you my Krugerrands or Eagles or bars that I already own to store for me? And maybe I'm getting nervous having this stuff in the bank or around the house or even buried in the backyard.
Sure, sure. And for good reason. Metals, outside of the obvious theft, metals, they can melt. So, that's an issue. Storing them in a bank. What happens if the bank closes and you've got them in a safe deposit box? So there's lots of reasons why you should be concerned about storing them sort of in close proximity. I wish I had a better answer for you today. We're working on it. We can do it we've done it for some people. Frankly, it's been fairly large holdings. The limitations are needs to be above a couple $100,000 in value, and it needs to be the metals need to be essentially in mint quality
Hmm.
and need to be metals that we sell. So essentially bullion.
Sure. So if I've got a Mexican gold coin that you don't sell, not going to happen.
Right. I can't help you. I'd be glad on a one-off basis to steer you in a direction, but through Hard Assets Alliance, I can't help you. We are actively working on a service through Brinks where you would be able to ship smaller quantities in, and they would actually open the package under camera, inspect the package, assay if necessary, and then put the metals into storage. So we're 2 to 3 months away from that. What we're really trying to do is gauge interest and demand. So
Sure.
if you receive any feedback on your end, I'd love to hear about that.
We sure will. Well, we did recently add the Gold CombiBar from Valcan Swiss, and I'm seeing it's pretty popular already. Do you think it's a product with universal appeal, or is it just kind of a prepper product?
Okay, that's a good question. I don't think it's a prepper product. I really like the Combi Bar. In addition to the way it looks, it's essentially, for those that don't know, Combi Bar is a 50-gram bar, which equates to about 1.6 troy ounces. And this 50-gram bar is shaped essentially like a credit card. So it's very discreet. You can put it in your wallet. But the bar is scored into a 5 by 10 grid. So the holder can break off a strip of, say, 5 grams, and then can even break that 5 gram strip off into individual 1 gram pieces. And each piece is labeled 0.9999 pure gold, which is the same purity as your standard bullion coin or LBMA good delivery bar. And what you have is when you break off a 1 gram piece, you have a piece that's worth $45, $50, depending on where the market's at. It's a usable, tradable piece of gold in a size that is reasonable. I mean, if you walk into for whatever reason you want to barter a coin, say, well, you've got a coin that in your hand is worth 13, 14, $1,500. It's hard to go buy a tank of gas with a coin, right?
Absolutely.
So,
And there
so
might be a
that's
little
kind
bit
of the
more of a
allure.
trust issue too. I mean, I'm more willing to trust that $50 piece of gold is fake than that $1,500 piece of gold is fake.
You'd certainly be looking at it more closely, I think.
What chance do you see for the kind of societal breakdown where a combo bar would come in handy? And I'm sure that varies from country to country, but you guys have got a pretty good exposure to what's happening. And I guess we don't even have to mention Syria. Just in your own mind, personal opinion, what do you think might be the likelihood we'll be seeing that actually come to use the way they intended?
I think there's a couple of scenarios where it could come to play. One is for trade among like-minded people. I think it's perfect. So if you are in an area such as a Utah or an Arizona where precious metal is on the verge, or in some of those areas already is acceptable legal tender, well, the combi bar gives you a usable denomination to affect your trade in. So that could happen now. And I suspect it is happening now. The other scenario, and I was just interviewed by a large mainstream media outlet, and they asked me the same question: discount total financial collapse. What scenario could you really see playing out over a year or so? And my answer was, I was stuck on the interstate in Connecticut when we had the blackout of 2003 and the power grid went down across the eastern seaboard into the Midwest. And
Scary.
people were stuck, right? I mean, gas stations didn't work, ATMs didn't work. If you had $5 in your pocket, you had to make that $5 stretch, right? So that lasted, I think a little over a day. In the area that I was in, I know it was lasted longer in other places and less time in still others. But think about a situation like that where what if it lasted a week? Or what if a hurricane came through and knocked out power for a week or so? Gas pumps still aren't going to work.
No
And
ATMs.
right, ATMs aren't going to work. So whatever cash you have, that's going to go quickly. And then what do you fall back on? I would argue that silver coins or something like a combi bar could be great to have on hand in an instance like that.
Well, I think so too. And of course, I fall victim to the very first comment you made about it, where it's just kind of cool, you know?
Right.
But do you think you'll be offering the silver combo bar or platinum or palladium soon?
I could see offering the platinum bar at some point. I'm not sure about the others. The reason I really liked the 50-gram gold combi bars, it just felt like it was the right size and the right shape for the right metal. I
Mm.
mean, platinum is a little bit more esoteric on and certainly palladium on the investor scale. And we sell about 70% gold, 25% silver, and then the rest, the fractions, the remainders are platinum and palladium. So,
Sure.
a silver coin is still a reasonably usable size, somewhere around $25 right now. That feels like an okay size. So I don't know if the need is there for the silver combi bar so much as the gold. I think the gold combi bar really fits uh, a niche, admittedly, but one that is underserved.
Oh, I think you're right. And it's if there actually was a lot of demand for it, I'm sure we'd have a supply problem.
I think you're right. Thankfully, Valcambi is, they've been great to work with. Valcambi Swiss is a well-known, well-recognized LBMA listed refiner in Switzerland and really have their act together, and they've done a great job of supporting the product. So we haven't had any supply issues yet, and we've sold several hundred just in the week or so that we've made it available so far.
Doesn't surprise me. What improvements to your service are you currently working on that you can tell us about and that you haven't already mentioned?
We're working on improving our site for mobile use. What we've known for some time now is that more and more commerce is happening over not just the internet, but mobile devices. So I think we're at the point now where e-commerce in general is approaching 50% mobile, and that's only going to continue. So
Right.
tablets, widescreen phones, that's where commerce is going. So we are working on improving our mobile capacity for our website. We did just recently overhaul our website, so it's much more user friendly now. We added several new charting features, so you can go in and pick any metal that we've discussed and essentially any currency and get a history of prices right through from 24-hour prices right back to as far as history will go. So those are things that we've recently done. As far as our service goes, we are very close, and when I say very close, a matter of weeks away from rolling out an automatic investment plan that we're calling the Metal Stream program. And the Metal Stream program, it does a couple of nice things. It allows you to dollar cost average into a position, and it allows you to lower the minimums that you would need to invest through us. So you can take full advantage of our program, our platform, and our pricing, but you don't need to worry about that $5,000 minimum that we've had for a while now. So how it works is you can allocate funds to be transferred by ACH into your Hard Assets Alliance account on a monthly basis. It could be as low as $250 a month. And when we receive that money, we will, once a month, we'll take all the funds that come in and we will allocate those funds to a metal purchase. So say it's 1 ounce gold bars. We will take everyone's funds and we will buy that exact amount of gold bars for that month. And now your deposit is now backed by gold. But here's where we're different. There are several programs like that out there, but none of them offer you affordable convertibility. So what we do is when you get to the point where you've reached 1 bar or 2 bars or however many you want, you can go into your account and you can opt to have that converted to a whole bar in your name. So it moves from being essentially a fractional pool program to being fully allocated. So you have a bar that then becomes yours. It shows up in your account. You can place it in storage, or you can take delivery of it for no fee. So we're really excited about that. It gets rid of the fairly high minimum requirement that we have to have in order to satisfy our dealer network. So it really takes another step towards democratizing precious metal ownership for the individual investor. I'm excited about that program. I'm going to use it.
Well, are you ready for an onslaught of new business?
We are,
I,
absolutely.
I think it's going to be popular.
I hope so. I hope so. I think it will. I mean, it's just like our system to begin with is the only one of its kind. This system is going to be wholly unique. And it just goes back to our core belief that we really feel like it's important that individuals that are investing in precious metal make sure they get some exposure to the actual physical, tangible metal and be able to hold it in their hand if the time comes when they need to.
Absolutely. Now, one thing you mentioned was the ACH deposit feature, and that's a real convenience for me. I love ACH. Do you think there's a possibility you might allow ACH withdrawals in the future?
We're working on that. Our banking relationship hasn't been able to provide it for us up until recently. They've come back and said that they think they can make it work in a way that is secure. And that's obviously our first concern, is making sure that everything is secure. So we're now in a beta mode testing with them on that. I do hope that we can roll it out, but ultimately it will be for our technology guys to decide that it is fully secure and locked down, and then we can roll it out. So I do think it will happen. It's just a matter of when.
Great. Well, one of the things that, as far as the minimum purchase level, that a couple of people bumped across is, and maybe just because it wasn't explained well enough or didn't understand it, is that when, let's say you've got enough to buy enough money in your account funded that you can buy, say, a 10-ounce gold bar,
Hmm.
and the price of gold went down. You say, hey, I've got enough left over. I can buy a gold eagle. But the gold eagle actually is kind of a different category, and it has to exceed the $5,000 minimum as well. Do you see a chance where maybe in the future you might be able to kind of commingle those purchases to cross the $5,000 threshold? Or is that simply something that your dealer network kind of puts a restriction on you?
Potentially, as we grow our volume, we get more and more clout, and we already are the largest customer for several of the members of our network. So I think it could happen, but at the same time, I do try to be cognizant of the fact that what we've essentially done is we've taken an institutional level product and service and brought it to individual investors. And we've been able to be successful in doing that by offering something that individual investors want, but also being mindful of making sure that the system and the service works for all of our partners so that it's a win-win all the way around. So far, we've been able to do that. I think as our volume continues to grow, we will be able to get to that day where we can sort of either reduce or, in a perfect world, shed our minimums. I'm
Sure.
not quite there yet, but I'm hopeful that it will happen.
Well, one of the things about your service is that you have very competitive storage fees for people that do choose to store in your vaults. Will there be any kind of a minimum storage fee complication once you implement the automatic investment plan for small accounts? Or I presume you probably already looked at that, but can you just comment on that briefly?
No, there won't be any change. Our normal storage fees would apply. We felt like that was really important that we aggregate our volume. That's one example of where have been able to aggregate our volume and negotiate strong pricing for someone who's maybe just starting out on the path to investing in precious metals or doesn't have an unlimited supply of funds, and most of us don't, to invest in precious metals. Keeping it affordable, keeping the premium and the costs overhead as tight as possible. So no, there won't be any issue with storage.
So in other words, you'll be small account friendly then.
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely.
Was there anything else you'd like to tell us about Hard Assets Alliance or precious metals investing, new products or other changes you see coming as we begin to close out 2013? I hear that, as we kind of discussed before, certainly will be one for the books.
Absolutely. I guess the only thing that I would end on is if you're new to precious metal investing, do take a moment to get up to speed on what the base case reasons are for investing in precious metals. I think you'll find them quite compelling. No one believes for a moment that quantitative easing is going to end at the end of 2013. It's here to stay on a worldwide basis, and at some point there are going to be consequences. And your investment portfolio could use some insurance against some of the potential negative consequences of QE, which would be currency debasement. Your dollar's worth less tomorrow than it is today. Inflation, similar type argument. So consider it as an asset class. And if you want to learn more about our service, please check us out on our website. And Roger, I know that you have a link on your site, so that's probably the best place for people to go, is to just go to your website and then click off onto our site.
Ed, I can't thank you enough for your time speaking with us today. It's been a real pleasure for me, and I think there's going to be a lot of great exposure for people that, as you say, are trying to learn more about precious metals and gold and whether or not it's right for their portfolio. And hopefully interviews like this will just help that and make things better for everyone.
Sounds good, Roger. Hey, I really appreciate the time. Always enjoy speaking with you.
Thank you.
Take care.
You can find links to our full Hard Assets Alliance review and the Hard Assets Alliance website, both on your screen and in the description of this recording. We think you'll be every bit as happy of a customer as we are should you decide to invest with them. At BuyAndStoreGold.com, we publish articles of interest to precious metals investors and review companies like Hard Assets Alliance so that you can learn what these companies offer, what they really are like to do business with. The difference between Buy and Store Gold and some of those other sites on the web is that we actually have invested our own hard-earned money and the money of family members, friends, and clients with the companies we review. For us, it's more than brochures, fancy websites in theory. It's real life and real money. That's all for this time. Thank you for joining us. I hope this has been helpful to you. We also would like to extend our thanks to Ed D'Agostino and others at Hard Assets Alliance for making this interview possible. We look forward to seeing you at BuyAndStoreGold.com and future interviews we do just like this one. Please subscribe to our channel so you get updates when those are available.